Hey everybody, it's all over. It's all done.
So sad.
Yeah, as people have been finishing and kind of putting little posts up, I've just been kind of down a little bit inside. But here we are to discuss book 9 of the Expanse series, Leviathan Falls. Has everybody read it? Can I check?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's good. So we can talk full spoilers then. And as you're introducing yourselves and going around, and we'll start with Robin, so we give plenty of notice. I want just to pick who you think is the closest approximation to you as a character. Having read all 9 books of it now and kind of seeing a lot of the foibles, a lot of the character growth, and people that maybe you one time hated, disliked, and maybe came to sort of grudgingly appreciate towards the end of the book, who do you think is the best fit for yourself? You can go first, Robin.
So helpful. Thanks so much. Hi, I'm Robin. I'm from Bookends and Biscuits, a channel who talks about sci-fi and crime and sometimes fantasy. This is a super hard question because I don't strongly identify with any of the characters really, although I like a lot of them. But put on the spot, I'd have to say Alex. I make friends wherever I go. You know, I'm quite into like doing the job and everything else. I don't really identify strongly with anyone else. Like help to resolve conflicts in teams.
This is interesting.
My answer is that one, and I like his development at the end.
That's a good jumping off point for some of the discussions coming off. That's good. Okay, Susanna.
Hello, I'm Susanna Imaginario. I write weird fantasy and recently have a YouTube channel. It's still touch and go at the moment. Which color? Well, Kristen, of course, Sarala. Especially the version in the show, minus the outfits, because no, she's all color, I'm not. But yeah, she's the one that I identify the most. Give me, about 20 years, and I hope that I can refine, language to or swearing to that level. Yeah, she talks the way that I think most of the time.
I like that quite a bit. Great. Thank you, Steve.
I'm Steve from Steve Talks Books, and my answer may surprise everyone, if I'm being honest. I would like to say Miller, of course, because I love Miller, but if I'm being completely honest, I think I'm probably closest to Holden, because I managed to get in my own way all the time, and I means well, but somehow managed to make everything worse. So I think I'm probably Holden, if I'm being honest. So
maybe that's why you hate him so much.
Maybe that's what it is. But...
I'm Leila.
Yeah, I'm Leila Goshi, English professor, editor of Ballady magazine, and as far as my character, I'm also going to say Holden, and that's because I think I used to be more like early Holden. Like there's a moral and ethical way to do things, and and I love my coffee and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I relate to that part of him, that part also, that somebody's got to do something. I think that's a element I recognize in myself too, although in all points not as extreme as Holden has done. But yeah, I relate to him.
Interesting. 2 Holdens, and Avasarala, and Alex. No Amos. Not quite surprised. I don't know who the heavy would be in this crowd, because it certainly ain't me. I would have said Alex, I have to say, as well, for me, both in terms of dad jokes, in terms of general kind of wanting really just be part of the group and kind of make sure the group's kind of good. And as much as I thought for probably the first 5 books, I definitely was Holden, and that's why I didn't like him very much, because I've seen actually how pathetic he was for a lot of them. That's like a mirror for yourself. I think his kind of redeeming qualities, especially, has come out towards the end of this book. I think make him not very me. A fun exercise, though, in general. So, finished the book. before we go through any of the plot points, people's general feelings about the series, whether you were satisfied with the ending, whether you thought it kind of petered out a bit towards the end, or what do you think?
I thought they wrapped it up well. I really do. And in hindsight, I think they wrote the characters so it does make sense how things have turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the character arcs for each person seemed to kind of come out in some way that kind of you
Right.
nodded your head a little bit as it went through.
I definitely agree with you. I think it wraps up in a little bow very nicely. It makes a lot of sense. You can see where the whole arcs are. Like, it makes logical sense how they wrapped up as well. You didn't think, how on earth did that happen? Hated it. Hated it so much. I'm a happy ending person.
Oh, right.
I
Okay.
don't think this is a happy ending.
Well,
So
that's what I was
I-
going to say. Do you not think it was a happy end?
No, not at all. It made me sad.
Oh.
So I mean, I like it as a book. I do like the whole series. It just didn't.
Mhm.
I wasn't left after the book with that kind of warm fuzzy glow. I was left after the book kind of going, oh my god. So that was my issue with it.
Oh, interesting. We'll
Loved it,
discuss
though.
that in a bit more detail, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Susanna.
Sorry, the dog is barking. Can't stop.
He didn't like it.
No, no, I loved it. I was not expecting because the previous two books after the 30-year gap, I was kind of like, where this is going, and when finally everything made sense, and especially that epilogue, 1,000 years later, it's just beautiful. Love it.
Nice. And Steve?
I try to not think too much about the 30-year gap and the jump and where we go beyond the TV show. I try to not let them affect my enjoyment of the series. I wasn't crazy about the first half or so of this one, but I did like the ending. I'm the opposite of Robin. I like the sad, depressing ending. So
shock.
Okay, right. But yeah, I did like how they wrapped it up. I wish we would have seen more. We'll get into it, but I wish there would have been more about the ring, who created the ring and the protomolecule. I wish we would have seen more of that. And there was a few things I wasn't crazy about, but overall, I did like the way they wrapped it up.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was very similar, and exactly what you said there, Steve. I think this actual setup, when I think back to where the book started, etc., I was like, oh, this is very. It felt very tropey, you know what I mean? With a lot of cybernetic-y kind of tropes, and kind of I was done with Duarte as a character. Kind of put him to bed at the end of the last book, and it was like, oh well, he's coming back, he's going to play a part, etc. And while he didn't and did, that wasn't so good. But actually, the big questions are the big philosophical sci-fi questions, aren't they? Towards the end, as they were all fighting, there was a question, I think, as to whether it was worth fighting for at that stage, whether the singularity or the idea of having a single consciousness actually was going to be a better outcome for a world that was in conflict for most of it. For most of the first 6 books, certainly, it's a very fractured world. Humanity's very split, and maybe a singularity was going to be a good outcome for that, and whether they should even fight for retaining that. And I think some of the ways that they did that with the immersion tank and all of that kind of stuff, they kind of illustrate that and play with how our understanding of that went, I think was very clever.
And didn't you like when the title finally makes sense from book 1, Leviathan Falls, and then you finally understand what the Leviathan. I was over the moon with that.
I didn't even catch that until right now.
Because they were kind of Leviathans. They evolved in deep water, and then they were these kind of beings of light. And there's a paragraph. It's been a while since I read the book. I read it when it came out, but I remember I had it noted when you kind of understand what sort of life form they started as and how they evolved. Yeah, it was pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. Any particular favorite parts of the book that really jump out to people, or bits that you that really gravitated to them and oh, I really like that.
The end. Amos,
Yeah.
every scene with Amos.
Yeah, Amos is a pretty great grounding point, I think, right the way throughout the series. Is when you're kind of a bit confused, or you're thinking this is right, this is wrong. Just ask Amos what's happening. Even when he decides to go in and do the immersion stuff himself, it's like, is this good? Is this bad? Send Amos in, we'll get an answer. You know, that did happen. Yeah.
I was really interested in the section where Jillian, it was all about female leadership in a way. I mean, Jillian, thought she knew better than Naomi, and she thought she was doing what Bobby would have wanted her to do, or she was following in the example of Bobby. And then at the end realized she was wrong. And that was a suspenseful scene for me. And only in hindsight did I realize, that these were all female leaders and this exchange was going on, kind of like the ghost of Bobby. And what would she would have done versus what Naomi was doing. But I also didn't know who would turn out to be right. I mean, I knew Naomi would survive somehow because hopefully she still I thought she still had a little plot armor left, but I just wasn't sure how that was going to turn out. So that was suspenseful for me, and I enjoyed that section.
I thought that section was particularly good. Actually, it was nice, and it also did a nice arc back to how she was thought up previously and how green she was, and again back to the fact that the very beginning, how she'd even known the crew of Rocinante and that kind of conflict as well. I thought that was really done. I thought it was particularly poignant how she died off screen. So it was kind of like that was very well done because kind of brought home that like she's not important enough
Story,
to be have her own kind of death scene like Bobby did, like everyone else. And I thought that particularly I enjoyed how they kind of just showed that through not having that there. But you're right, it was really interesting. It was a nice little. I was taken by surprise by it as well because you always assume that they're going to do what the rest of the crew want to do. So that was nice. It was an enjoyable part. One bit that stood out to me that I didn't particularly enjoy such, or I was taken by surprise, was the bit where they almost killed off Alex's son and grandson.
Yeah.
That bit, I literally was like yelped. I was like, oh my god, they did not. What? And then obviously you find out that, and it was kind of so unexpected, and I was like, oh, of course they wouldn't have. But that particular bit did make me like stop in my reading and be like, oh my god. So I thought that was quite well done as well because it shocked me because it's not something they usually do. So
but it is an interesting question. Why do you think they did it? Because they did leave it kind of very up in the air for a lot of chapters, for a lot of that book as to actually the outcome, and even why they were important to the story.
I think it was bringing, it was adding characterization to Alex, and helping us, the reader, understand ultimately Alex's where his priorities were going to lie, or lie. And so it helped me understand what was at stake for Alex more than the son and grandson. I did like the scenes. I think it's a nice little creepy scene when the character starts to realize that they're dissolving. So I did like that, but I think mostly their death or their disappearance was more about Alex.
I think what was interesting about it is I think we were looking at, or certainly I was, at the effect of Alex's life and decisions on his son as a father. Do you know what I mean? How they were going to play out, and even the fact that all of that happened to him when the wife or the partner wasn't there with him. Kind of going, oh, this is reflection on his parenting skills and that kind of stuff. Plus, I also think it added a level of uncertainty as to what was the good outcome for at the end, because at that point of the story we weren't really sure what the outcome was going to be, how they were going to save the world, whether it was due to be worth saving. I think there was real questions as to whether the singularity was actually going to be the better outcome for everybody to be able to stick together rather than a lot of people dying or whatever the outcome was going to be. And but to Steve's point, the fact that we never really got explained about the protomolecule and about the people and all that kind of stuff at ultimate story, which seemed to me before the book was what this whole book was going to be about. Like, I think that was sort of the promise of the setup, was that we were going to get answers to that part of it, and that ultimately they decided no, it was about people and it was about characters and about the kind of outcomes for the people that we got to care about, and that kind of stuff. I thought was really interesting, especially through that lens of having this group of people that were sort of involved, being Alex's son and grandson, etc., but not really part of it.
We did get, especially in the earlier books, we did get a lot of teases about what the protomolecule was, or what it was doing, or how it was reacting to things, and I kind of felt a little bit let down about not having more protomolecule as the series went on.
Especially as a personification, as it came to, because it was represented then at the very end as Duarte, kind of as this sort of cybernetic kind of conduit, as it went through it. And I think we've done this kind of thing beforehand. The last time that Holden and Miller went to the slow station, and kind of fought their way through that whole thing. That kind of idea was already presented there, and I didn't love that part of it. Although it did give an opportunity for Teresa to kind of play a role in grief and all of that kind of stuff. All of those, very raw emotions for that young girl who was very mature but still was missing a lot of development in her life.
I think the whole point there was about the looping back, wasn't it? It was about bringing that arc home. You found Miller again. You went back to the station and did this all over again. So I think that's what helped it feel like the end of a series, because they're closing out all of those kind of like open arcs and putting a bookend on it. So I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, I was happy to see Miller again, or hear Miller.
Hear it again. Well, the thing, and this is, well, I guess opposite of what everyone's saying, but regarding the protomolecule, I never quite bought into it. It was that aspect. Oh, this is very interesting, but for me, it only became interesting when the portals appeared, when it became Stargate. But I was never focused on that. Whatever little bit of information we get from it, I think the more we knew, the less amazing, fantastical become, and the more they were trying to find uses for it. It was losing the stick, and I really appreciated that it stayed focused on the characters. It was how the characters reacted to it and what it did to their world, to their universe, to their story. I liked at the end knowing a little bit more of the origin, but I didn't need to know anything else. I didn't know their whole story, what happened in detail. That's a completely different story. I was just happy with just the magic element in the background that just set everything in motion.
Yeah, there's I've been in a conversation about this recently, where I'm trying to remember where it was, maybe discussing P.L. Stewart's book, but where there are stories where you have the big bad, and then we learn about the characters because of that big bad, and then there are stories where we're seeing multiple perspectives. Maybe it was a Malazan conversation.
It does sound familiar. Yeah.
Huh?
It does sound familiar.
Yeah. But I think for this, it worked well. And, another parallel I noticed was humanity wasn't totally, obliterated, but Earth, it seems like Earth was obliterated. And so, well, not, totally, but it sounds like it's a mere shell of its former self. And so I kind of relate that to they're landing on this planet and finding Alex. I mean, not Alex, Amos. Much like they had gone to that one planet and found, didn't find any people or beings, but they found just the old stuff. So I found it seemed like there was a parallel there where it didn't quite wipe out the human race, but it some of the impact was still similar. So
Yeah, it was definitely interesting how the whole story starts with three factions: Earth, Mars, the Belt, kind of in conflict within the one system. The gates open up and all the possibilities, and like you say, they kind of Mars is left as a shell. Earth is left as a shell. Nobody's talking about the Belt anymore because the Belt has become the rest of the universe. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what they have to do is kind of go back, shut all the gate system off, and go back to and then rebuild those kind of those centers of commerce, those centers of life again for things that they disregarded and cast off. No, kind of use up all the resources, but they're gonna have to go back and use it and rebuild. And I wondered how much of that was kind of an allegory for environmental change and all of that kind of stuff that we have here. The fact that it's sort of assumed that we could do all these other things, but ultimately, at the end of it, we may just have to look after the earth or the resources that we have, and rebuild that.
That's a great point. I mean, we could think of the climate as, in fact, we saw a really terrible climate on that one planet, with the storm and so on. But we did end up, I thought it was interesting, we ended up with Amos 1,000 years later. And I was a little confused by who the 30 worlds were. So they were just somewhere out in the galaxy, but they weren't worlds from the gate.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, I wasn't sure. Well, so Amos, I don't know why I'm saying that, Amos is a leftover then of the protomolecule. Very interesting. Sequel.
It deserves its own series. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the interesting part about him, it isn't just the protomolecule. It was sort of the repair bots, wasn't it? Like, it wasn't just like they injected him for the protomolecule. It was the repair bots that kind of repaired his life. And given that, so it was like a technological advance as much as it was this kind of this molecule and stuff that was going to do. So, like, I kept on having that kind of switch in my brain between it's not just as simple as, well, this is protomolecule technology, because this was, an advancement of that even again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, I think, that a lot of the story focused on Elvie and is it Carlos is her partner. That a lot of them, like a lot of the what you would say the savior aspect, came from Elvie. Who was the hero of the book at the end? It could be argued that it wasn't Holden and it wasn't really Naomi, but it was Elvie. That they realized that somewhere along the way.
I really liked the parts of Elvie where it had a discussion about the morality of what she was doing as well. I really enjoyed that because there was a discussion about whether or not it was moral, whether or not it's worth it to save lives, and then it was like again whether or not actually what they were doing was still better than what would potentially be done as well. So I kind of liked those kind of thought processes in the discussion. I don't know if it is Carlos, but Carlos and Holden had when they went to see the catalyst, the lady who's in the protomolecule, and that whole discussion of like, well, it could be worse. I know what we're doing is not great, but it could be worse, and that was a really nice thought thing to go through it, because it's always about ethics and morals and whatever, if they're doing something correct or not. But I thought that was a nice discussion point they had on that.
Do any of you see Duarte as trying to do the right thing at the end? He thought that was the way to save them by creating a hive mind. He thought that was a way to beat the protomolecule. So that's another moral issue.
He always thought he was doing the right thing, though. He never thought he was the bad guy. He always thought the stability, having a stability of a stable government, for lack of a better term, was the right way to go. And that was what was so frustrating about Laconia anyway, because it was always kind of like, well, you're forcing us to do bad. We're not going to put things on you that you aren't necessarily outlandish. You just have to do what we say as a way of control. So he always thought he was on the right side of things anyway. He just expanded into, actually, we should all be more. So yeah, I agree. I think he totally thought he was doing the good thing for humanity.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Here's the interesting question for me, right? As readers who have been involved with these kind of small crew of characters for so long, how much did our desire for those characters to be okay at the behest of everybody else in the world influence how we felt about the story? Because ultimately, I think Duarte's plan would have saved all of humanity. Whereas what actually happened was that a lot of people were cast off. Anybody trapped behind the gates was going to die. Like, millions of people are going to die with this outcome. But because our crew was safe, we feel, but it was okay. It was justified.
I don't think anyone wants to be part of a huge hive mind, non-individuality thing, surely. I mean, is that better?
I'm just put it out there.
No, I was actually concerned reading the book because that idea really thought, oh no, this can't go this way because humanity is not built for that. And I at some point I was thinking that it was the protomolecule almost influencing Duarte to kind of, so it wouldn't be humanity, it would be whatever the protomolecule entity conscious was. And then when Olden went in and said, oh no, he's not going to do it because he's never going to sacrifice, that much of humanity. This is disastrous. But I think it's the beauty of his character arc, because he started as this idealistic young man, and you can see it, especially in the last few books, he's just getting more and more jaded, just tired of it all, of people doing the same mistakes, of missing opportunities, of just all the greed and cruelty, and it was in that moment that he actually kind of matured, peaked, and where his point of view and Miller's point of view came together, and he realized, okay, no, something is going to have to be sacrificed because we are not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. This is not the way, because if we do this, we lose ourselves. So yeah, brilliant dilemma, and beautifully handled.
Yeah.
Could that
thought.
be? Oh, I'm sorry, Layla. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to mention. I wonder if that's kind of exploring technology in our own lives and social media and other ways that we're consuming technology now. Maybe they do in this whole series. One thing I really loved about it is that they bring these big ideas in and they be presented in a way that doesn't feel like it's like bashing you over the head with it. And that if you think about it, you can pick out, ideas, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's not. It's very subtle, and that's something I like about the series quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, in regard to the 1300 worlds, I did think, yeah, some of them are gone, but then I think a message of the book is about humanity being able to rise again, and so I have some hope for some of the worlds. And so the book left me with that, although I think it seems pretty grim too, but it was realistic.
Give a shout out to Tufty, who I know from watching his Twitter posts is doing Memories Legion, apart from the last story, if I remember rightly from reading your tweets. But he's sticking around saying hi before he catches up and watches all of this again. It'll still be here when we're done. YouTube keeps a record of it, and might be days and nights that I'm lonely and thinking, God, I'll just stick up one of our old group Expanse reads just to keep you going. But I hope you're keeping well, Tufty, and enjoying Memories Legion, and eventually the last book. You'll have to pop back into the comments and let us know how how you feel about it all. I think you make a great point there, Steve, about the fact that Expanse is sort of sci-fi light for a lot of the time, but somehow manages to get all of the big sci-fi questions like what is humanity, what is the purpose of humanity in there to discuss if you wanted to, and ultimately, like the question that you said, is the singularity better? Robin, when you were saying, is really the what is humanity about then? You know, can humanity survive or be called humanity if individual thought and individual creativity isn't fostered and kind of built like that? And I think for a lot of people, especially readers, I think that kind of go, oh, this is the antithesis of life. You know, this is this kind of idea that we wouldn't have our individuality or freedom being the very central concept of life that they probably have, I think is very, very expertly handled through the book.
Something I liked too was on an individual level along those same lines was Naomi and Jim thought they were going to retire, you know, and then of course something pulls them back in because we knew something would pull them back in, but just you know, Naomi ended up being a leader again of the resistance, I guess, and Holden sacrificed himself, and so that was kind of a message that, you know, I don't know, maybe some personalities can't retire, but that they still had things to contribute, you know. So I liked that theme. But a little sad that a little sad that they didn't get to have that retirement too.
Not a little sad, it's very sad. Very, very sad. But I just loved the quite you. No, but I loved the character. I just loved the character arcs of all of them, because you had the Holden where he was, you know, that young man, righteous, I think, right? Who, I know he likes to give himself up to save the world, but that is his ultimate outcome. Then you have Naomi, who's this very quiet, you know, quiet in her shell person, ends up becoming the leader of the whatever. You have Amos, who's got this very troubled, really bad history, ends up looking after a bunch of kids. You know, Alex goes back to his family, who's left so many times, and this is the one thing where he goes back and he finally ends making that decision that that's where he wants to be. So it's really, as I said, I hated it, but I also loved it because they make sense. Like you can see the arcs they've been on and where they end up works. So yeah, I really like that for each of them.
Mm-hmm. For every character, even the ones that you know, the arc ended in the other book. So Bobby, she went out fighting.
That's right.
That was her purpose. Oh gosh, what was her name? The sister.
Clarissa?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Clarissa?
Clarissa, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, when she died, I remember that scene that she was thinking that, you know, she wasn't afraid, and what came out from her mouth was that I am a monster, because of the rhyme that I'm not a monster because I am afraid, monsters are not afraid. And she realized she wasn't afraid, but what she said was, I am a monster. And then she was thinking, oh, but that was not what I meant, but oh, I don't care. You know, she finally let go of worrying about what other people thought of her or what she should be or do. And I thought that was beautiful. I wasn't here for that discussion, so I just had to.
Yeah. Rather predictably, I was glad that it didn't develop into the nice resolution of being about Naomi and Jim, which I continue to say was the least interesting part of the entire book.
I was so glad when they didn't do any goodbyes. And this is not thumbs up for the writers, because I think they knew what they were doing. There's not another goodbye and I'm going to die. Please don't make me read through that. And then this time they just, no, we've had plenty of goodbyes. And
we've done our, yes. Yeah, I
go.
thought that was quite nicely done. Even though my feelings of Unholden totally softened by books 8 and 9, I thought, you know, I quite like him at the end.
I think they did his trauma so well, because he was actually traumatized. Like it showed the impact that, you know, he was a prisoner for that long. Like they actually brought it, like it diminished him, but it made sense that they didn't try and still make him this like forerunning hero that was completely fine and just got on with it. Like he was actually affected, and I thought that was done really well. And then other people came and stepped forward because he was completely unable to, and they didn't have to do that. But I just thought that was done really well because you expect Holden to be the hero the whole way through. So yeah.
But his entire character arc from the start of it was the kind of not even a reluctant hero. He was a sort of an accidental hero a lot of the time. He was just very lucky, and the kind of messiah thing that came out of it was that he was always in the right place, the right time, doing the right thing. Just happened to be, hunches paying off, things going well for him, which we all, like, regardless of what you felt about him, you wanted it to work every time. That was one of the nice things about how that was written, is regardless of how you felt about Holden as a person, you sort of wanted him to succeed kind of in what he was doing all the time, because it meant good things for the characters that we all cared and love about. So the fact that he was then able to come to still be the center of it all, but be in a backstage role and be the sacrificial role was very much on brand, I think, for him at the end.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thinking back on the series, I think every villain was sympathetic in some way, right? I mean, I think all of them were at least a little bit. I mean, at least you can say, I kind of get it. I mean, I don't agree with them. I don't agree with Marco killing, billions of people, but it's like, I see his motivation. Does that make sense?
But he had to be believable because he wouldn't have got people to rally to his cause. It wasn't that he forced people to join his cause. There was an injustice already there. He was a freedom fighter, at the heart of it. His methods and what he ended up doing were obviously the bit that made him the villain. But his cause was just and right, I think, and it was proven so, I think, probably by the end of it.
He was such a good character. He's probably one of my favourites, to be honest. He was just done brilliantly. I mean, I don't really think he's like, yes, go Marco, but I just thought he was such a brilliant villain. So, yeah, he was wicked. But yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I very much agree with you that everyone you can kind of see.
I didn't like him. I thought it came across as too narcissistic, a bit two-dimensional. It kind of seen that villain before. I think it was the weakest of all. But that's just my opinion. Maybe a bit tainted by how he was portrayed in the show, which didn't help at all. But yeah, in his mind again, he was the hero. Every villain, from their perspective, they were the heroes, and they all had cause for what they were doing. They didn't just woke up one day and decided, I'm going to take over this, or I'm going to kill those people. They thought they were doing good. And that makes the best villain. Sometimes you can't argue with them.
I think something I got this time from this was Tanaka, how similar she is to Drummer on the show in personality, or is that me? I felt like I was reading that character. I mean, in terms of her assertiveness and issues. I don't know. Did anyone else notice that, or not really? It seems like a show they combined.
I think she was just a lot colder than Drummer. I mean, Drummer was like harsh and everything else, but she was warmer, I think. I don't know if that's the right way to explain her.
She had a sense of family. Like, she was very much like trying to look after all the belt, whereas Tanaka was very self-centered and very much about duty and her. But again, her trauma, I think, was captured and worked with very well. I mean, the bit that was hidden, that she hid from other people in her actions and stuff, and how that ended up coming out for herself and what she ended up doing, I thought really subtly well done. Like, didn't have to be that complex a character, but made that character that more sympathetic, I think, towards the end.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about Teresa? How do you think? I was kind of disappointed Teresa even tried to save Duarte. I thought she was smarter than that. I know it's her dad, but I mean, she knows all the inside scoop on what happened. But I guess a parent is your parent. But I'm still a little disappointed.
I wasn't. I think it's always hard with to write kids and make them like likable. I don't know if that's the right word, because I mean they're kids and they make mistakes and everything else.
No kids
But
are like all quote. That's a
it
t-shirt.
looks, it's hard. But it's. I just think I do understand the whole, because they had quite a close relationship. Like he was willing to give up his being the only empire for her, and then she, is still her dad, and I mean he killed for her, he was protecting her even when it came down to it, and I think they had quite a close relationship, so I can see that side of it. But yeah, I don't know. She was
Yeah.
12. I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
it's complicated. I could see how it's
Yeah.
complicated.
I just thought, regardless of how this, see at that whole scene, and you were like, I think it's going to end this way, but I'm not sure. But I was like, she's going to be so effed up for the rest of her life. There's no way she can come back from this. Like this is properly like messed up. Can't close your eyes at night stuff. But I think of the whole series, the two weakest parts of the entire series are, I think, Teresa in that final book, because they don't make her a believable 15-year-old. Like they try and make her more mature for most of it, and then it doesn't work. And then the aging of them, the 30 years later, like the things that the characters are doing, both those big massive age differences, I don't think work at all in the series. I think they're both the weakest parts of it. Now, ultimately, they become not as important to the big scheme of things, so you kind of gloss over it. But I think those are the parts that I kind of go, I don't love that.
Yeah.
I really struggled with the time skip initially. Like, I really struggled with it initially. I kind of got to grips with it more as we got through the last arc, because I understood it, because it gave them that kind of ability to show the empire growing and where it ended up and so on and so forth. And you couldn't have done that without that massive time jump. And I think once you got used to it, it worked. But the first book was really hard. I think, I don't know if I enjoy it now rereading it. Now I knew it was there.
Yeah.
Because the shock of it was like, what is this? What is happening? What are they trying to do? But now I've read it, I think I wouldn't be so horrified by the time jump.
Yeah. I sort of understand why they had to do it. It just felt very clunkily done. It just, and didn't seem to follow through an awful lot of the other things to make sense within it. It just seemed like somebody hit the fast forward button and nobody had experienced the 30 years, but they just were 30 years older and 30 years had passed. Like the relationships hadn't changed. None of that. The only thing that had happened is Alice got married again. Had another kid. That was it. 30 years. So, like, I hate that part of the book. It colors my whole opinion of that 7th book, but I could do without it. If I was going read individual books, and we'll come to that, I think, towards the end, if you think about your favorite books, that you could pick up and read one of them by your time, kind of what ones jump out of you. I think for most people, that'll be one that just kind of go, other than interest level, to see if it makes sense in retrospect. You're kind of like, oh, that was troublesome. So anything else about the book, on book 9 on its own, that anybody has in their notes or wants to jump out, speak about?
I wish I kind of at least skimmed it before this, but I didn't have time.
Quick, open the wiki.
I was thinking in the beginning, like, well, this is the last book, so something needs to be resolved, and they were still building up stuff that it seemed like, how, there's 200 pages left, you're going to have to resolve this. So I do remember having that thought that that you're giving me all this information, and it's all these these things happening, and how is it going to end? So it was one of those books throughout the series that I had no idea. Every prediction went out the window. Completely surprised me. So I was puzzled right until the end. That's why it was great.
I 100% agree with you. I was like halfway through the book and I was like, how are they going to resolve this? I don't understand. Like exactly the same thought process. I thought Duarte was going to have a lot more to do with that. Like he just disappeared and it had nothing to do with the rest of the story, which is highly entertaining. But exactly the same. I was like, how are they gonna like? I get this, and then I was like, yeah, completely taken by surprise about it. I also didn't think they'd do the stepping back of the gates either, because that looks like sound like such a regression at that point.
Yeah.
But it worked. So yeah.
But again, maybe an allegory for the idea that not all progression is good.
Yeah. Weren't ready for it.
You weren't ready for it, yeah. No, but ultimately have led to their destruction if they had have went through to the end of it, which I think's sort of interesting. But like you mentioned, the last kind of 200 pages, I was like, how are we getting Miller back into the story? That was my one thing that was reading it, because the book really needed Miller at that stage. It needed that resolution, and it was honestly, as soon as they got a way to bring him back, it was like, yes, let's go.
I mean, but how awesome is that? That 9 books after, we are still hoping. Please, can you bring that character back just for a little bit? How awesome a character is that? Genius.
No, absolutely. University loved. He's fantastic. Oh, good. I did have one question about this, and maybe you guys can help me, because if I remember correctly, when James Holden, oh no, I've already remembered. I've already solved it for myself. So he was saying that because when the protomolecule was around, he saw Miller, and I was like, so why did he have to inject himself? Because he was next door to the protomolecule, but it was because he kept disappearing, wasn't it? And he couldn't have him in front of him when others were around. That was the solve, I think. That was why he had to inject himself, maybe.
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think it was better unexplained, one of those details. But yeah, fine. I'll go with it. I was just happy that he was there and whatever. I don't know if it was something that, because in the previous books, they put in that caveat that only he could see and he would disappear whenever there are more people. And then they get to the last book and say, no, we're going to have more people around. Okay, so are we going to solve this? So he's just going to inject himself. Maybe there was a conversation like that at some point. I don't know.
It was a very Holden solution to the problem. It was like, turn it up to 11, right? Let's go straight to the most extreme thing that I could do, because it's only me.
I did think that. I was like, there must have been like a much more sensible way out of that, but no, just stick it in the neck. Done. Okay,
I think there is a little bit of interplay between him and Naomi when she sort of questions and say, "Could you not have?" And it was like, just it's done, away we go. But yeah, I sort of think it might be worth them making the last 3 series of the TV show just to have that Miller returning moment, just for that. They could spend up, £1 billion just to have Miller return for a scene. These are things that humanity needs, I don't know. So nothing else about the book itself before we start to go to talk about the series as a whole. Well, if it comes up, we can go back to it for sure. And as Steve rightly says, I've only just noticed it says Miller was right. At the end of Steve's name. Miller was always right. That was never in question.
Yeah.
Okay, series as a whole. And I know this can be kind of hard because we have our ups and downs. Favorite books of the series?
First and last.
First and last? Interesting.
Yeah.
I think the first 3 or 4, where they were really building the characters in the world. But I love all of them. But I think those are most memorable to me because I was learning about the world and the characters and getting to know their quirks. And, and I like to go back and read now about the characters that have passed on, like Bobby. And the belt and everything. I was kind of sad to learn that the belt is no longer there, that no one knows how to speak Belter anymore. But yeah, I'd say the first 4, but all of them in general.
Okay, Steve, here you go.
No, go ahead.
I think the first one And then the downfall of Marcus Aurelius, because I said I really liked him. I think he's a perfect cult leader. I think he's wonderful. But I really liked that book because actually that was a sad book because everything was quite depressing in that book, but it still had a happy outcome. So the first one, just because it's a brilliant introduction to the series, to the people, to the ideas. But yeah, and then I think is it book 6 maybe?
Yeah,
It might be
6
that
is
one.
right.
Yeah, I just liked that outcome. But I think with Layla, I really enjoyed all of them. Even this last one was a fantastic book, even though it wasn't a happy ending. So they're all excellent. Did you guys see sorry, Steve, before you get to yours, did you guys see the little notification at the front of the book? That made me like, oh my god.
No,
No.
actually, I have it in front of me.
Yeah, open the first page and it's like 9 books in and you're still here. So this one's for you.
Yeah.
That made me smile a lot.
I don't think I've seen that at all, Robin. So, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Steve. Which one's your favorite?
No, it's okay. I think looking over the list, probably the first one and the third one. So Leviathan Wakes and Abaddon's Gate were the two that stood out to me.
Wow.
But Leviathan Wakes is probably my favorite because Miller.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One's great.
Was Abaddon's Gate the introduction to Bobby, or was that the second one?
Second one is Bobby. Third one is Bull, isn't it? And
Oh, the Slow Zone.
the Slow Zone. Yes, yes, it is. Because there's then 4, which I really like, Cibola Burn. I think a lot of what happens for the rest of the series happens on the events of Cibola Burn, on that single planet. I really like that in retrospect. I've sort of conflicted thoughts about it when I watched the TV series and stuff, because it was kind of just not set in space, that kind of stuff. But like a lot of the characters and the events that happen on it and what happens at the end of it kind of set everything else in motion. And then 8 for me, I think book 8, The Tiamat's Wrath, is excellent. I think it's really, I like philosophical sci-fi in general, and I like the kind of, it again could be partly because it's the book where I kind of went, James Holden's not all bad. I've been wanting to like him. He's the kind of person that you should like, but until that stage, it was like, nah, okay. This guy's okay. I'd invite him around for dinner. Might even cook for him and not just get a takeaway.
Wow.
I know. So yeah. Comparison, obviously, the TV series is almost impossible not to make, because I think I'd be surprised if anybody didn't just see the characters from the TV series every time they read one of the characters in the book. Even Duarte's in it very, very recently. I still have that character in my head from the TV series. Should they make 7, 8, and 9?
I think yes.
I would like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To do it, they might have to wait another 15, 20 years until these characters have aged sufficiently.
Yeah.
Oh no, they can fix that with the makeup.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do, but it would be worth seeing, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be very, I think the makeup bit might just be breaking it for me, if
Not a
just
series, maybe maybe they could fit it into a movie, or just one season, like 8-10 episodes to cover the whole 3 books. Yeah, they'll have to cut a lot, but you would still get the main of the story. Maybe they could simplify things in Laconia just a little bit. It wouldn't hurt. Yeah, I would definitely watch that.
Yeah, it would need to be produced by the same folks, have the same
tone, and the same characters.
There
Otherwise,
seems to be a theme of adding, embellishing adaptations recently, and I just thought they did The Expanse so well. Yeah.
One final question from me, and that's around Naomi. It feels to me, and I thought it, and it feels from our conversations, there's not a lot of love for Naomi's ultimate arc, if you know what I mean. She's not the favorite character of anybody. So I actually made a list because I was thinking I'll do a video on this top 10 Expanse characters. She's quite a way down my list as well.
I blame the TV show. I blame the casting of the TV show. It was horrible. Naomi in the books, she's awesome. She would be the second one that I identify with. Her character arc was excellent. Her decision in life, the choice she made. It's I don't know any other character that is not villain that was able to make that choice and people still like her. And so that was brilliant. She had integrity to the bone, and she was a survivor as well. And I really blame the series on that one because she came across so stroppy, and in the books she was always calm, always rational, always trying to do her best work at every level in her life. That's how I understood anyway. So.
I wonder if that's why I guess I have overlooked her in a way, but I think it is because she's the steady, reliable one, and we had other characters. In real life, Naomi would be my first choice to have, as a coworker or anything, just a very capable, intelligent person. But this story has so many bizarre characters, and they need a Naomi to sort of level that out for everyone. I think, so I think that's why. But that's a great point. I briefly considered her, but I don't think she'd be my first choice as relatable.
Yeah.
That's a different story.
She did seem a little like an afterthought at the end. I think she deserved better in the last book.
Yeah.
Even though it's weird because she's ultimately the person that saves them all. It's her plan. It's her.
Yeah.
Her coordination. She's the one that pulled it together. She's the one that kind of made the decision. No, this is what we're doing, and yet somehow she's a sort of afterthought because she didn't make the ultimate sacrifice, I suppose, because she survived. Maybe it's the guilt of the survivor. It could be something about that because Amos is sort of already dead, even though he's going to live forever. In the same way he had his death scene.
Yeah, I just I'm with Suzanne on this. I think she's an excellent character. I think she's really good. But I'm also with Layla. I think she's just somewhat overlooked because the other people are so lovable and they have certain character flaws that maybe make you love her. I think I completely agree with you, Susanna, but the way they wrote her backstory and the leading of her family and the fact that you're not demonized for that shows how well they've written her, because you really you understand where she's coming from. You kind of see that she couldn't have stayed, and it's all written out there. The TV did not, I agree with you, that did not do that very well at all. I really hated her in that series. Didn't understand it at all until I read the books and really got more of the background and in her head thoughts. It was done much, much better in the books. But yeah, she's a reliable character, but I just don't think she was outstanding, and some of the other ones were outstanding. So I think that's the thing there.
Maybe that's the one message of the books. Not everyone can be Avasarala or James Holden or Jay. There's just average folks doing what they need to do and, helping move the ball forward, as they say.
So, question.
Holden would be no one without his crew, without his family.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He'd be dead without them. But
long time ago.
Yeah, but who do you think would be a good casting for Naomi in the show? Like, do you have any ideas on who would fit that role?
I kind of imagine that, like Gina Torres, for example. I guess she should be a bit older, too old by the time even the show starts. But yeah, someone a little bit older, a bit more mature. That's how I picture her in my head.
I think she was cast a lot for her physicality. I mean, she's a very tall, Dominic Tripper is a very sleek, tall woman, and obviously fit and ethnically, what they were looking for with it. But there were a sort of a cast of unknowns, by and large. Apart from Christian Avasarala and was Bobby. I'd seen Bobby in something else as well.
Miller.
And Miller, of course, Thomas James Miller. Oh, it's just so good. Oh God. He was just genius casting, to be honest. Honestly, the hat and everything, they just got everything so on the money with Miller. That for me, like you say about the writing of her in the show, I can't get over the Philip in the show because he really annoyed me in the show, and so much that it translated to the books. Then I could never get over the kind of whininess of that character in the book. So I never liked Philip in the books, and of course, as you know, Naomi's ultimate fault was a choice of partner. I just cannot. I cannot assuage how somebody so smart, so capable, so brilliant could have decided, and longed after him for years, in a moment of high tension that the two of them got together. That would have made sense, but the fact that she lost, I don't know. It's a character flaw in its own right.
I just totally get it. I don't know. I get it. I get it. As I said, I think the being that kind of charismatic and being in that kind of situation, I completely get it. I mean, terrible bad choice for her front, but yeah.
As it turned out.
I understand it.
So interesting. So, anything else anybody wants to bring up about the series in general?
Only that, Philip did live. Naomi thinks he's dead. And I wish he had matured enough to really, realize that maybe he should reach out to Naomi. But I can see how it makes it even more poignant in the books that she thinks he's dead and he's not. You never know. And he might even be trapped behind one of those gates.
You should maybe read the short stories.
Oh, okay. Let's do that. Okay. Now I'm curious.
I'm sorry, Robin. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say about the short stories is when I'd read them, I was like, I don't think you have to read them in any order. I actually don't think it matters if you read them before or afterwards. I disagree with that sentiment completely now. I think you should read them either afterwards or during where the books are, because they do bring a lot of context. They make great stories by themselves, but I actually do completely agree that you should wait until afterwards, because I think a lot of them link in, like with the kids especially. I hated that short story, but it makes so much more sense in the context of the actual books. So yeah, I was wrong. Sorry, Steve, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was just going to ask, what's everyone's biggest annoyance from the series? What's the one thing that you can't get past?
Oh, I have to think about that.
Well, but my only minor annoyance was Naomi's character in the show. Everything else, no complaints. Quite the contrary. So I'm really glad that it was adapted, because otherwise I'm not sure if the books would probably go by almost unnoticed and really helped. It's a great story.
My major annoyance is around the characters that they killed off, because I actually think the characters that they killed off in the terms of the story were the people that you wanted to see more of. Whether that was in the show or otherwise, like even Fred Johnson.
Oh yeah.
Great character. Really great character. Easy to forget by this stage of the story, but absolutely brilliant. I mean, again, his story arc of being the former Earth general, the then leading the belt, and the kind of suspicion that they always had about him, even though he kind of, all of that stuff's really rich and really thematic, and sort of killed off by having a stroke, essentially. I just felt a bit cheap. And then losing Miller, even though they wrote him back in, he's such a brilliant character. Such a, they only have him in 3 books, essentially, or 4 books. It feels like we could have had something else, because everybody brings a certain something to the story. A bit like we're saying about Amos. If you want to know what's really going on, just ask Amos what's happening, or and Miller kind of had, the windows and doors, all of that cut the whole way through. Every time you've seen something like, you're like, yeah, you just check your windows and doors, check your windows and doors.
Miller's ending was so good, though. I just
Yeah.
thought. So,
Oh, it is.
how would you write it any other way? I think I agree with you. It's sad that he's not more in it, but I just think his ending was done so well.
It was. No, there's no doubt about that. And it makes such a great climax, that first book. Like,
It's funny that we still talk about Miller, and and really the Miller we get in later books wasn't really Miller. I mean, it was Miller.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the memory of Miller.
And we still talk about Miller all the time.
Yeah, that's it. It was genius what they did, because if he had survived somehow, or if he had came back as himself because of some magic, he would completely not completely, but he would lose that weight. He would just become another character, and he did it in such a way, and just feeding little bits of Miller here and there throughout the books, and that's the character we're still talking about as a character that is one of the most memorable, even though it was the first book. So I was disappointed in the second book when I realized that he's not going to come back, and then when he did come back, it wasn't quite.
Brilliant.
But and I kept hoping again right until the end, just a few pages more. It's gonna have, and they. Okay, so we were disappointed because we wouldn't have Miller anymore, but at the same time, we were, very well trained as readers to expect just a little bit more of Miller, just to keep reading, because you might find out just a little bit more. Miller became almost associated. He was associated with the protomolecule, with that mystery, with that flavor, that little spice in the story. Love it.
Yeah. Just a shout out to Alex. Waits to the end of the 9th discussion of the 9th book of a series to come on and say hi, to take a break. I admire you. Hope you're keeping well, having a great evening, and looking forward to catching up soon.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I think the things. Well, I don't know if this point is probably the wrong term, but there's a lot that they didn't go into further. Like, I would love to know more about Mars. I thought Mars is a fantastic concept. I would love to know more about that and delve into that a bit more. But obviously, you can't. There's just too much to go into. And other things like that. I think the Playme is quite interesting, and the Belters and things like that. There's a lot more you could have delved into that you didn't have time for, which would have been great. I wasn't the fan of Clarissa, as you guys know. I just didn't like her redemption arc. I think it was too quick. I think a lot of things you've said, Susanna, has made me rethink on the character a little bit. But yeah, I think she was just never my favorite. But I don't know if that's because I love Amos and I was like, get away.
Yeah.
So who knows? But yeah, I just thought her redemption arc was just too quick. I just didn't enjoy that for what she had done. And I would have been happier had it had a happy ending. But it was awesome the way it did finish. So that's kind of my note points on that.
Yeah. My biggest problem with the time jump is the fact that it meant that Christian Avasarala had to die, probably. You know what I mean? Given the time jump like that, that's the biggest disappointment for me of that whole 30 years. Is like, we lost the person that I used to roar out loud laughing at. Like, we lost the ability for Amos to call Avasarala Chrissy in every book right towards the end.
Get away with that one. Yeah.
So brilliant.
That first line, I swear I nearly just said, no, I'm not, I don't care, I'm not going to continue reading, because I was already annoyed with the 30-year jump, a little bit, and then I opened the book and I read that and I was like, oh, just no. I just kept going for Miller and Amos, and just let's see what's going to happen. But yeah, the disappointment, but now I appreciate. I mean, I understand why she had to die, and her arc was done. She saved Earth.
Yeah.
So that was a role she, more or less, she managed to kind of salvage, more like. So yeah, I mean, the characters need to die, and sometimes when they die, that's, well, in the case of Miller, that's they become legends, and we're still talking about it. And everyone else, goes on to live a happy life, and we don't care. We're just like, yeah, they're happy, they're fine. I'm sure. In another world, or struggling on Earth, but they are alive. They're fine. Doesn't matter anymore.
No mention of the red shirts, all the predictable characters that came along that we knew they would die in about 10 pages.
Too much plot armor.
Mhm.
A lot.
Yeah. They kind of just dropped. I wasn't sad to don't know any more about them. The character, again, I forget her name. She was season wise, I think it was like the third season. The blonde woman. I'm terrible with names. I'm sorry. There's too many characters.
Need a little bit more context. Which bit?
She was not a priest, a minister.
Oh yes, Juliet.
Did she die?
No, she didn't die.
Anna was a character name. Sorry, Anna.
Anna.
Juliet had lost.
The last we heard from her, she was struggling with her wife and the kid.
That's right.
Somewhere.
Okay.
And then, unless I missed something, I don't think they were ever mentioned again. I don't think they died. They just kind of dropped that plot point. And it was necessary because her role again was done. Was to bring the religion perspective into it. And I thought the character was great because even though she was so dedicated to the faith and she believed, and she also believed in science and she also believed in aliens, and it was, but it was done. If she didn't die, maybe they had plans, but again, it's another story. She's probably having lots of adventures somewhere else.
Yeah.
Preaching to an alien civilization somewhere. I don't know.
Sure. Here's a thought I've had about the series as a whole. I would say, are any of the books truly 5 stars in their own right? They're all 4.5 in my view, but I think this shows the value of an entire series work, because I think it's a 5-star series, which sort of doesn't make sense, if that makes sense. Made up of 4 and 4.5 star books, but as a whole, and the thematic stuff and journey that we're taking on, I think it's an absolutely brilliant read of a series from start to finish.
Yeah, I agree.
This may be an unpopular opinion, but this series could have been 5 books.
Ooh.
Tell the same story.
Hot take.
There's a lot of fluff. There's a lot of fluff.
There,
7, maybe 5.
What would you have cut? There's the question.
There's
I
a lot.
think
That's an excellent question. What would you get?
Laconia. Most of it. I didn't need to know how they worked, how they functioned, their society. I really didn't. They could have just had the same story or the same impact with the robot things, the dogs, whatever. If it was just the first settlement there, I don't think they needed 30 years. I mean, they needed for the numbers and etc. But it is still science fantasy in a way. So I think they could have speed that bit up.
I think it's an interesting point you make, Steve, because ultimately Amazon agree with you.
No.
Well, yeah.
They stopped it after 6. They thought the natural end of that story, or a suitable end, was the end of Marcus Aurelius. So they felt like the Laconia stuff, the resolution of the protomolecule, wasn't strictly a problem. They gave them 6 episodes or whatever it was to wrap up the Inara story and then be done with it, which, if you're a fan of the series, I think we all could read another, or some of us at least could read another 4 or 5 books in the series, like without any problems, to spend more time with the characters, reading books in between, all of that kind of stuff. But I think, like, unpopular opinion or not, I think ultimately the executives at the TV station completely agree with you.
That's a great point.
I think it was still more to do with, we're gonna have to age all these characters to just even try, because you imagine the work. I mean, it took pages and pages. It took almost a whole book to explain to the reader, this happened in the last 30 years, and now there's this, to kind of reset the story. Imagine doing that for the audience. The amount of info dump required in the first 10 minutes. On a series that was already kind of not the most popular, it was very niche. I really don't know how they would
I think
handle
they
it.
could have done it. I think they could have done it. The only reason you needed 30 years was to give Laconia enough time to build ships. And all you had to do was say there was some sort of time dilation happened and they came back and they were able to do it. I mean, that's all you really need to do.
Always
And
bring
then
back-
everybody else could have been the same age. They could have just continued on with the same cast if they'd really wanted to. But there is a feeling, I'd say, that 7, 8, 9 do feel, partly because we've seen the TV show stop at that point, but it does feel epilogue-ish, the whole last 3 books, because of that, I think.
Mhm.
I was thinking when we were talking about Abercerala and the rest, after the time jump, we don't get the same sense of, we know they're a family. We don't get the same type of banter.
Hmm.
And I wonder if that was intentional to kind of sort of sober us up in a sense, but I did miss that. So, I mean, coming back to what do we not like, it's that change of tone, I think. And also, I agree with Robin. Teresa was not my favorite either. I think she was necessary, but I don't think we really got a full picture of her. Yeah.
And what about Julie? No one's talking about Julie. She just she triggered it all.
Julie as a character only really existed for 2 chapters, I think, in the book. After that, she was an entity, wasn't she? But I agree, like an interesting, especially when the first book was sort of this treasure hunt for her. Trying the missing persons case.
Yeah.
And trying to see what happened. Like the idea when we found out who she was, kind of a rebellion against her parents and all of that kind of stuff. Such an interesting and it's weighty approach writing a character that ultimately was never going to be saved.
Exactly. And all that build up, secondhand build up, because it's basically 2 new guys. I mean, we don't actually get a sense of why she's doing what she's doing. We do, but only to some degree. It was very well handled. I remember when he was reading her messages, and so you really get the character. But at the same time, was it bravery or was just almost a teenage rebellious face? I'm going to go into space and fight for the, and the consequences of that rebellious act that eventually ended up to Earth's destruction and the annihilation of most of humanity. When you actually think about it, and then no one's talking about her. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that she's not a hero. She's not a villain. She's what is she?
I get that same point that it was as much teenage rebellion as true belief, I guess. But I do have a question because my impression was that her and Miller's consciousness has like remade Venus. Is that what you took from her outcome? Because they fell into Venus. She was still not aware, but there was some connection between her and Miller. Or maybe I just told myself that too. But Venus changed somehow. So I thought that was like,
At the end, before she dies, we are not. I mean, I was not quite sure if it was still her or if it was almost the protomolecule talking through her, in a sense, because she was moving arrows because she wanted to go home. She thought she was flying a ship. She wanted to go home. She wanted to go home. So that's why she was crashing into Earth, and he kind of changed her mind. But I always wondered, was she still there? Because she seemed to, take everything very well. Oh, there's this stranger here, pretty much declaring his love and saying it comes to saving everything's going to be all right. And who are you? The first reaction would be, who are you? Where am I? What's going on? So, yeah, I don't know if it was her consciousness. We never quite understand what happened there. Why could Holden see Miller and not her? because they died the same way. If anything, she was more connected to the molecule than he was. But I do think once they hit Venus, the molecule took over. Miller was just itching a hide, or someone was itching a hide in Miller's consciousness, and so she was probably just gone.
Yeah, because they make the
Yeah,
ring gate. That was
something-
the change.
It's a reread,
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
right.
know.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with that. I think they were probably just gone at that point, but because then the whole change on Venus was literally just to make the ring mate that went out.
Yeah.
Why it was Miller and not her? They did mention briefly at the last book. It was because Alden had a pre-existing relationship with Miller.
That's right.
He didn't know Julie, so it was the protomolecule kind of took.
I remember that.
Took the
memories from
idea of
this.
Miller because Miller was someone who could find something, and because he knew him.
Would be interesting to know if they injected Clarissa, if she would see the sister. We'll never know.
Don't know. That is true.
To be fair, yeah, actually, from how they explained it, probably.
Yeah. I think it's also worth pointing out that within the terms of the story, I think Jules Pierre Miro is actually one of the true monsters within the story as well. So she was rebelling against somebody who actually was horrible, and self improve or self gain above humanity, as it was, I don't know. So we've come to the end of our Expanse road. 9 books, 8 of which I was a part of, 2 of which Susanna was a part of, but as a family we've sort of got to the end together. I personally would just like to say how much a joy it has been to read it with everybody and kind of meeting up with everybody and getting to know people and kind of and the benefits of having a reading group that do, I would say, read books that we didn't all universally like the same ones or like the same things or the same ones, which I think is really where the joy of buddy reading comes from, because you can see that maybe my opinion isn't somebody else's opinion, and that what didn't work for me worked for other people. I think is ultimately one of the great things about reading as a hobby and discussing it.
So
and you always end up seeing things, thinking things in a different light, and it enriches your enjoyment of the story, at least for me.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even if I don't agree, if there's a different perspective that I haven't considered yet, it's always a bonus.
Definitely. I like it more when there's people who tend to not think the same way, because it just makes you think in different ways. It's been great. But no, you guys have all been awesome. It's been a wonderful journey.
Thanks so much, including me at the end. I wish I'd joined sooner. Yeah.
So, want to do outros? Tell people where to find you, what you're reading next, or whatever. We'll start those and we'll do it with. We'll start and do it in reverse now. We'll start with Leila. Leila, you can do your outro first.
Oh, me? Oh. Well, I can be found on X now, formerly known the account formerly known as Twitter, under El Goshi or Balladine Magazine. And I'm currently reading with Varsha's channel. Is that the Under the Misty Mountain?
Reading by the Rainy Mountain.
Reading by the Misty Mountain. We're trying to read the list of sci-fi masters, so that's going to be fun. I think we're reading I Am Legend.
That is correct, Richard Matheson. Indeed.
Yeah.
Great. And Steve?
Well, you can find me at pagestream.com, and we are reading lots of books. I'm reading Manifest Delusions with Varsha and Dan. We're reading, I'm actually going to start Perdido Street Station. We're also starting Malazan again in a month or two.
Yeah, that's
reading Prince of Nothing here in about a month. I know Suzanne was a big fan. And we are, and I'm trying to think what else. I don't know. It's all there on the forum if anyone wants to check it out. Oh, Ward Show.
Oh, yeah.
I forget. I just read the whole chapter.
Awesome. Susanna?
You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, pretty much everywhere as Chronodendron, and my channel is The Den of the Weird. And my books are also everywhere. Can't miss them.
Awesome. And Robin.
Yeah, Bookends and Biscuits on YouTube and Bookend Biscuits on X, I guess now, which is like good. And yeah, I am reading I Am Legend. I've almost completed it, so I should be good for the next chat on that
Okay.
one.
Nice.
Yay! I missed one. Apologies. Also trying to catch up with the mystery series because I've missed out on that one as well. Oops. And reading Tomorrow as a
Yes,
personal
and
just bit. So yeah, lots of good stuff going on.
awesome. My name is Chris Mullen. You're on my channel, and I'm reading all of those books that everybody's kind of talking about. I'm reading I Am Legend. I'm reading the War Host of Vastmark. I've still a chapter to do for tomorrow for a discussion that will be on or on Tuesday or Wednesday or something of the following week, and yeah, very much looking forward to discussing that. So, do you want to say something? Sorry, Susanna.
Oh, I didn't say what I was reading. What I've been
Yes.
reading for the past almost 2 months has been the Sun Eater series. I'm obsessed. I just stopped to read the Forever War for our chat, and I hope to squeeze in I Am Legend again because I want at least escape. But yeah, that's all I've been doing. It's just I'm almost at the end of the third book.
So if anybody's enjoyed this little reading group or otherwise, we'd be sure to get together at some stage for various other reads and discussions in the future. And anybody that's kind of been following along with us and reading the books along with us, thanks very much. Your comments, etc., have all been very appreciated and helpful as we've kind of navigated this all together. Aside from that, I hope everybody has a great rest of your night, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. And we'll speak to you all again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.